The Complete Works of William Shakespeare by William Shakespeare. Act 4. Scene I. Windsor. A street. Enter Mistress Page, Mistress Quickly, and William M.R.S. Page. Is he at Master Ford's already, think'st thou? Quickly. Sure he is by this, or will be presently, but truly he is very courageous mad about his throwing into the water. Mistress Ford desires you to come suddenly. Mrs. Page. I'll be with her by and by. I'll but bring my young man here to school. Look where his master comes, 'tis a playing day, I see. Enter Sir Hugh Evans. How now, Sir Hugh, no school today? Evans. No, Master Slender has let the boys leave to play. Quickly. Blessing of his heart. Mrs. Page. Sir Hugh, my husband says my son profits nothing in the world at his book. I pray you ask him some questions in his accidents. Evans. Come hither, William. Hold up your head, come. Mrs. Page. Come on, sirrah. Hold up your head. Answer your master. Be not afraid. Evans. William, how many numbers is in nouns? William. 2. Quickly. Truly, I thought there had been one number more, because they say OD's nouns. Evans. Peace your tattlings. What is fair, William? William. Poulture. Quickly. Polecats. There are fairer things than polecats, sure. Evans. You are a very simplicity, Oman. I pray you peace. What is lapis, William? William. A stone. Evans. And what is a stone, William? William. A pebble. Evans. No, it is lapis. I pray you remember in your praying. William. Lapis. Evans. That is a good William. What is he, William, that does lend articles? William. Articles are borrowed of the pronoun, and be thus declined, singularator, nominativo, hic, hoc. Evans. Nominativo hig, hag, hog, pray you, mark, genitivo, hudges. Well, what is your accusative case? William. Accusativo hinc. Evans. I pray you, have your remembrance, child. Accusativo hung, hang, hog. Quickly. Hang hog is Latin for bacon, I warrant you. Evans. Leave your prables, Oman. What is the vocative case, William? William. O vocativo o. Evans. Remember, William, vocative is carrot. Quickly. And that's a good root. Evans. Oman, forbear. Mrs. Page. Peace. Evans. What is your genitive case plural, William? William. Genitive case? Evans. I. William. Genitive, horum, harem, horum. Quickly. Vengeance of Jenny's case. Fie on her. Never name her, child, if she be a whore. Evans. For shame, Oman. Quickly. You do ill to teach the child such words. He teaches him to hick and to hack, which they'll do fast enough of themselves, and to call whorum. Fie upon you. Evans. Oman, art thou lunatics? Hast thou no understandings for thy cases, and the numbers of the genders? Thou art as foolish Christian creatures as I would desires. Mrs. Page. Prithee hold thy peace. Evans. Show me now, William, some declensions of your pronouns. William. Forsooth, I have forgot. Evans. It is ka, quay, quat. If you forget your cas, your quays, and your quats, you must be preaches. Go your ways and play, go. Mrs. Page. He is a better scholar than I thought he was. Evans. He is a good sprag memory. Farewell, Mistress Page. Mrs. Page. Adieu, good Sir Hugh. Exit Sir Hugh, get you home, boy. Come, we stay too long. Exit Scene 2. Ford's house. Enter Falstaff and Mistress Ford. Falstaff. Mistress Ford, your sorrow hath eaten up my sufferance. I see you are obsequious in your love, and I profess requital to a hair's breadth, not only, Mistress Ford, in the simple office of love, but in all the accoutrement, compliment, and ceremony of it. But are you sure of your husband now? Mrs. Ford. He's a birding, sweet Sir John. Mrs. Page. Within, what hoa, gossip Ford, what hoa? Mrs. Ford. Step into th chamber, Sir John. Exit Falstaff, enter Mistress Page MRS. Page. How now, sweetheart, who's at home besides yourself? Mrs. Ford. Why, none but mine own people. Mrs. Page. Indeed? Mrs. Ford. No, certainly. Aside to her, speak louder. Mrs. Page. Truly, I am so glad you have nobody here. Mrs. Ford. Why? Mrs. Page. Why, woman, your husband is in his old loons again. He so takes on yonder with my husband, so rails against all married mankind, so curses in Eve's daughters, of what complexion soever, and so buffets himself on the forehead, crying peer out, that any madness I ever yet beheld seemed but tameness, civility, and patience, to this his distemper he is in now. I am glad the fat knight is not here. Mrs. Ford. Why, does he talk of him? Mrs. Page. Of none but him, and swears he was carried out, the last time he searched for him, in a basket, protests to my husband he is now here, and hath drawn him and the rest of their company from their sport, to make another experiment of his suspicion. But I am glad the knight is not here, now he shall see his own foolery. Mrs. Ford. How near is he, Mistress Page? Mrs. Page. Hard by, at street end. He will be here anon. Mrs. Ford. I am undone, the knight is here. Mrs. Page. Why, then, you are utterly shammed, and he's but a dead man. What a woman are you! Away with him, better shame than murder. Mrs. Ford. Which way should he go? How should I bestow him? Shall I put him into the basket again? Re-enter Falstaff. No, I'll come no more ith basket. May I not go out ere he come? Mrs. Page. Alas, 3 of Master Ford's brothers watch the door with pistols, that none shall issue out, otherwise you might slip away ere he came. But what make you here? Falstaff. What shall I do? I'll creep up into the chimney. Mrs. Ford. There they always used to discharge their birding pieces. Mrs. Page. Creep into the kiln hole. Falstaff. Where is it? Mrs. Ford. He will seek there, on my word. Neither press, coffer, chest, trunk, well, vault, but he hath an abstract for the remembrance of such places, and goes to them by his note. There is no hiding you in the house. Falstaff. I'll go out then. Mrs. Page. If you go out in your own semblance, you die, Sir John. Unless you go out disguised. Mrs. Ford. How might we disguise him? Mrs. Page. Alas the day, I know not. There is no woman's gown big enough for him, otherwise he might put on a hat, a muffler, and a kerchief, and so escape. Falstaff. Good hearts, devise something, any extremity rather than a mischief. Mrs. Ford. My maid's aunt, the fat woman of Brainford, has a gown above. Mrs. Page. On my word, it will serve him, she's as big as he is, and there's her thrummed hat, and her muffler too. Run up, Sir John. Mrs. Ford. Go, sweet Sir John. Mistress Page and I will look some linen for your head. Mrs. Page. Quick, we'll come dress you straight. Put on the gown the while. Exit Falstaff MRS. Ford. I would my husband would meet him in this shape. He cannot abide the old woman of Brainford. He swears she's a witch, forbade her my house, and hath threatened Ed to beat her. Mrs. Page. Heaven guide him to thy husband's cudgel, and the devil guide his cudgel afterwards. Mrs. Ford. But is my husband coming? Mrs. Page. Ay, in good sadness is he, and talks of the basket too, howsoever he hath had intelligence. Mrs. Ford. We'll try that, for I'll appoint my men to carry the basket again, to meet him at the door with it, as they did last time. Mrs. Page. Nay, but he'll be here presently. Let's go dress him like the witch of Brainford. Mrs. Ford. I'll first direct my men what they shall do with the basket. Go up, I'll bring linen for him straight. Exit MRS. Page. Hang him, dishonest varlet! We cannot misuse him enough. We'll leave a proof, by that which we will do, wives may be merry and yet honest too. We do not act that often jest and laugh, 'tis old but true, still swine eats all the draught. Exit re-enter Mistress Ford, with 2 servants MRS. Ford. Go, sirs, take the basket again on your shoulders. Your master is hard at door. If he bid you set it down, obey him. Quickly dispatch. Exit first servant. Come, come, take it up. Second servant. Pray heaven it be not full of night again. First servant. I hope not. I had lief as bear so much lead. Enter Ford, Page, Shallow, CIUS, and SIR Hugh Evans Ford. Aye, but if it prove true, Master Page, have you any way then to unfold me again? Set down the basket, villain! Somebody call my wife. Youth in a basket! Oh, you Pandally rascals, there's a knot, a jing, a pack, a conspiracy against me. Now shall the devil be shammed. What, wife, I say? Come, come forth. Behold what honest clothes you send forth to bleaching. Page. Why, this passes, Master Ford. You are not to go loose any longer. You must be pinioned. Evans. Why, this is lunatics. This is mad as a mad dog. Shallow. Indeed, Master Ford, this is not well, indeed. Ford. So say I too, sir. Re-enter Mistress Ford. Come hither, Mistress Ford. Mistress Ford, the honest woman, the modest wife, the virtuous creature, that hath the jealous fool to her husband. I suspect without cause, mistress, do I? Mrs. Ford. Heaven be my witness, you do, if you suspect me in any dishonesty. Ford. Well said, brazen face. Hold it out. Come forth, sirrah. Pulling clothes out of the basket, Page. This passes. Mrs. Ford. Are you not ashamed? Let the clothes alone. Ford. I shall find you anon. Evans. 'Tis unreasonable. Will you take up your wife's clothes? Come away. Ford. Empty the basket, I say. Mrs. Ford. Why, man, why? Ford. Master Page, as I am a man, there was one conveyed out of my house yesterday in this basket. Why may not he be there again? In my house I am sure he is. My intelligence is true. My jealousy is reasonable. Pluck me out all the linen. Mrs. Ford. If you find a man there, he shall die a flea's death. Page. Here's no man. Shallow. By my fidelity, this is not well, Master Ford, this wrongs you. Evans. Master Ford, you must pray, and not follow the imaginations of your own heart. This is jealousies. Ford. Well, he's not here I seek for. Page. No, nor nowhere else but in your brain. Ford. Help to search my house this one time. If I find not what I seek, show no color for my extremity. Let me forever be your table sport. Let them say of me as jealous as Ford, that searched a hollow walnut for his wife's leman. Satisfy me once more. Once more search with me. Mrs. Ford. What hoa, Mistress Page? Come you and the old woman down. My husband will come into the chamber. Ford. Old woman? What old woman's that? Mrs. Ford. Why, it is my maid's and of brain Ford. Ford. A witch, a queen, an old cousining queen. Have I not forbid her my house? She comes of errands, does she? We are simple men. We do not know what's brought to pass under the profession of fortune-telling. She works by charms, by spells, by figure, and such daubry as this is, beyond our element. We know nothing. Come down, you witch, you hag, you, come down, I say. Mrs. Ford. Nay, good sweet husband. Good gentleman, let him not strike the old woman. Re-enter Falstaff in woman's clothes, and Mistress Page MRS. Page. Come, Mother Pratt, come. Give me your hand. Ford. I'll prat her. Beating him out of my door, you witch, you hag, you. Baggage, you polecat, you ron yon. Out, out. I'll conjure you, I'll fortune tell you. Exit Falstaff MRS. Page. Are you not ashamed? I think you have killed the poor woman. Mrs. Ford. Nay, he will do it. 'Tis a goodly credit for you. Ford. Hang her, witch. Evans. By ye and no, I think the oman is a witch indeed. I like not when a oman has a great beard. I spy a great beard under his muffler. Ford. Will you follow, gentlemen? I beseech you follow. See but the issue of my jealousy. If I cry out thus upon no trail, never trust me when I open again. Page. Let's obey his humor a little further. Come, gentlemen. Exeunt all but MRS. Ford and MRS. Page. Mrs. Page. Trust me, he beat him most pitifully. Mrs. Ford. Nay, by mass, that he did not. He beat him most unpitifully methought. Mrs. Page. I'll have the cudgel hallowed and hung o'er the altar. It hath done meritorious service. Mrs. Ford. What think you? May we, with the warrant of womanhood and the witness of a good conscience, pursue him with any further revenge? Mrs. Page. The spirit of wantonness is sure scarred out of him. If the devil have him not in fee simple, with fine and recovery, he will never, I think, in the way of waste, attempt us again. Mrs. Ford. Shall we tell our husbands how we have served him? Mrs. Page. Yes, by all means, if it be but to scrape the figures out of your husband's brains. If they can find in their hearts the poor unvirtuous fat knight shall be any further afflicted, we too will still be the ministers. Mrs. Ford. I'll warrant they'll have him publicly shammed, and methinks there would be no period to the jest, should he not be publicly shammed. Mrs. Page. Come to the forge with it then, shape it. I would not have things cool. Exeunt Scene 3. The Garter and enter host and Bardolph. Bardolph. Sir, the Germans desire to have 3 of your horses. The Duke himself will be tomorrow at court, and they are going to meet him. Host. What Duke should that be comes so secretly? I hear not of him in the court. Let me speak with the gentlemen. They speak English? Bardolph. Aye, sir, I'll call them to you. Host. They shall have my horses, but I'll make them pay. I'll sauce them. They have had my house a week at command. I have turned away my other guests. They must come off. I'll sauce them. Come. Exeunt Scene 4. Ford's house. Enter Page, Ford, Mistress Page, Mistress Ford, and Sir Hugh Evans. Evans. 'Tis one of the best discretions of a Oman as ever did look upon. Page. And did he send you both these letters at an instant? Mrs. Page. Within a quarter of an hour. Ford. Pardon me, wife. Henceforth do what thou wilt. I rather will suspect the sun with cold than thee with wantonness. Now doth thy honour stand in him that was of late an heretic, as firm as faith. Page. 'Tis well, 'tis well, no more. Be not as extreme in submission as in offence, but let our plot go forward. Let our wives yet once again, to make us public sport, appoint a meeting with this old fat fellow, where we may take him and disgrace him for it. Ford. There is no better way than that they spoke of. Page. How? To send him word they'll meet him in the park at midnight? Fie. He'll never come. Evans. You say he has been thrown in the rivers, and has been grievously petan as an old oman. Methinks there should be terrors in him, that he should not come. Methinks his flesh is punished. He shall have no desires. Page. So think I too. Mrs. Ford. Devise but how you'll use him when he comes, and let us two devise to bring him thither. Mrs. Page. There's an old tale goes that Heem the hunter, sometime a keeper here in Windsor forest, doth all the winter time, at still midnight, walk round about an oak, with great ragged horns, and there he blasts the tree, and takes the cattle, and makes milch kine yield blood, and shakes a chain in a most hideous and dreadful manner. You have heard of such a spirit, and well you know the superstitious idle-headed eld received, and did deliver to our age, this tale of Heem the hunter for a truth. Page. Why yet there want not many that do fear in deep of night to walk by this Herne's oak. B. Ut what of this? Mrs. Ford. Mary, this is our device that Falstaff at that oak shall meet with us, disquist, like Heem, with huge horns on his head. Page. Well, let it not be doubted but he'll come, and in this shape. When you have brought him thither, what shall be done with him? What is your plot? Mrs. Page. That likewise have we thought upon, and thus, Nan Page my daughter, and my little son, and 3 or 4 more of their growth, will dress like urchins, uffs, and fairies, green and white, with rounds of waxen tapers on their heads, and rattles in their hands. Upon a sudden, as Falstaff, she, and I are newly met, let them from forth a soppet rush at once with some diffused song. Upon their sight we too in great amazeness will fly. Then let them all encircle him about, and fairy-like, to pinch the unclean knight, and ask him why, that hour of fairy revel, and their so sacred paths he dares to tread in shape profane. Mrs. Ford. And till he tell the truth, let the supposed fairies pinch him sound, and burn him with their tapers. Mrs. Page. The truth being known, we'll all present ourselves, dishorn the spirit, and mock him home to Windsor. Ford. The children must be practiced well to this or they'll never do tea. Evans. I will teach the children their behaviors, and I will be like a jackanapes also, to burn the night with my tabor. Ford. That will be excellent. I'll go by them vizards. Mrs. Page. My Nan shall be the queen of all the fairies, finely attired in a robe of white. Page. That silk will I go by. Aside, and in that time shall Master Slender steal my Nan away, and marry her at Eton. Go, send to Falstaff straight. Ford. Nay, I'll to him again, in name of Brooke, he'll tell me all his purpose. Sure, he'll come. Mrs. Page. Fear not you that. Go get us properties in tricking for our fairies. Evans. Let us about it. It is admirable pleasures, and fairy honest knaveries. Excellent Page, Ford, and Evans MRS. Page. Go, Mistress Ford. Send quickly to Sir John to know his mind. Exit MRS. Ford out to the doctor. He hath my good will, and none but he, to marry with Nan Page. That Slender, though well landed, is an idiot, and he my husband best of all affects. The doctor is well moneyed, and his friends potent at court. He, none but he, shall have her, though 20,000 worthier come to crave her. Exit Scene 5. Begarter and enter host and simple host. What wouldst thou have, Burr? What, thick skin? Speak, breathe, discuss, brief, short, quick, snap. Simple. Mary, sir, I come to speak with Sir John Falstaff from Master Slender. Host. There's his chamber, his house, his castle, his standing bed and truckle bed. 'Tis painted about with the story of the prodigal, fresh and new. Go, knock and kin, he'll speak like an anthropophaginian unto thee. Knock, I say. Simple. There's an old woman, a fat woman, gone up into his chamber. I'll be so bold to stay, sir, till she come down. I come to speak with her, indeed. Host. Ha! A fat woman? The night may be robbed. I'll call. Bully knight. Bully Sir John. Speak from thy lungs military. Art thou there? It is thine host, thine Ephesian calls. Falstaff. Above, how now, mine host? Host. Here's a Bohemian Tartar tarries the coming down of thy fat woman. Let her descend, bully, let her descend. My chambers are honorable. Fie, privacy, fie. Enter Falstaff, Falstaff. There was, mine host, an old fat woman even now with me, but she's gone. Simple. Pray you, sir, was not the wise woman of Brayford? Falstaff. Aye, Mary was it, Musselshell. What would you with her? Simple. My master, sir, my master Slender, sent to her, seeing her go thorough the streets, to know, sir, whether one NYM, sir, that beguiled him of a chain, had the chain or no. Falstaff. I spake with the old woman about it. Simple. And what says she, I pray, sir? Falstaff. Mary, she says that the very same man that beguiled Master Slender of his chain cozened him of it. Simple. I would I could have spoken with the woman herself. I had other things to have spoken with her too, from him. Falstaff. What are they? Let us know. Host. I come, quick. Simple. I may not conceal them, sir. Falstaff. Conceal them, or thou deest. Simple. Why, sir, they were nothing but about mistress and page, to know if it were my master's fortune to have her or no. Falstaff. 'Tis his fortune. Simple. What, sir? Falstaff. To have her or no. Go, say the woman told me so. Simple. May I be bold to say so, sir? Falstaff. Aye, sir, like who more bold? Simple. I thank your worship. I shall make my master glad with these tidings. Exit Simple Host. Thou art clerkly, Sir John. Was there a wise woman with thee? Falstaff. Aye, that there was, mine host, one that hath taught me more wit than ever I learned before in my life, and I paid nothing for it either, but was paid for my learning. Enter Bardolph. Bardolph. Out, alas, sir, cousinage, mere cousinage. Host. Where be my horses? Speak well of them, Varletto. Bardolph. Run away with the cousiness, for so soon as I came beyond Eton, they threw me off from behind one of them, in a slough of mire, and set spurs in a way, like 3 German devils, 3 Dr. Faustuses. Host. They are gone but to meet the Duke, villain, do not say they be fled. Germans are honest men. Enter Sir Hugh Evans. Where is mine host? Host. What is the matter, sir? Evans. Have a care of your entertainments. There is a friend of mine come to town tells me there is 3 cousin Germans that has cousined all the hosts of Reedens, of Maidenhead, of Colebrook, of horses and money. I tell you for goodwill, look you are wise, and full of jibes and flouting stogs, and 'tis not convenient you should be cozened. Fare you well. Exit enter Dr. Caius Cius. Vir is mine host de Jartier? Host. Here, Master Doctor, in perplexity and doubtful dilemma. Caius. I cannot tell that is dat, but it is telling me dat you make grand preparation for a Duke de Gemini. By my trot, there is no Duke that the court is no to come, I tell you for goodwill. Adieu. Exit host. Hue and cry, villain, go! Assist me, knight, I am undone. Fly, run, hue and cry, villain, I am undone. Exeunt host and Bardolph Falstaff. I would all the world might be cozened, for I have been cozened and beaten too. If it should come to the car of the court how I have been transformed, and how my transformation hath been washed and cudgelled, they would melt me out of my fat, drop by drop, and liquor fishermen's boots with me. I warrant they would whip me with their fine wits till I were as crestfallen as a dried pear. I never prospered since I forswore myself at Primero. Well, if my wind were but long enough to say my prayers, would repent. Enter mistress quickly now. Whence come you? Quickly. From the two parties, forsooth. Falstaff. The devil take one party and his damn the other. And so they shall be both bestowed. I have suffered more for their sakes, more than the villainous inconstancy of man's disposition is able to bear. Quickly. And have not they suffered? Yes, I warrant, speciously one of them, Mistress Ford, good heart, is beaten black and blue, that you cannot see a white spot about her. Falstaff. What tell'st thou me of black and blue? I was beaten myself into all the colours of the rainbow, and was like to be apprehended for the witch of Brayford. But that my admirable dexterity of wit, my counterfeiting the action of an old woman, delivered me, the knave constable had set me ith common stocks, for a witch. Quickly. Sir, let me speak with you in your chamber. You shall hear how things go, and I warrant to your content. Here is a letter will say somewhat. Good hearts, what ado here is to bring you together. Sure, one of you does not serve heaven well, that you are so crossed. Falstaff. Come up into my chamber. Exeunt Scene 6. The Garter and enter Fenton and host. Master Fenton, talk not to me, my mind is heavy, I will give over all. Fenton. Yet hear me speak. Assist me in my purpose, and, as I am a gentleman, I'll give thee £100 in gold more than your loss. Host. I will hear you, Master Fenton, and I will, at the least, keep your counsel. Fenton. From time to time I have acquainted you with the dear love I bear to fair and page, who, mutually, hath answered my affection, so far forth as herself might be her chooser, even to my wish. I have a letter from her of such contents as you will wonder at, the mirth whereof so larded with my matter that neither, singly, can be manifested without the show of both. Fat Falstaff hath a great scene. The image of the jest I'll show you here at large. Hark, good mine host, tonight at Heames Oak, just 'twixt 12 and 1, must my sweet Nan present the Fairy Queen the purpose why is here in which disguise, while other jests are something rank on foot, her father hath commanded her to slip away with Slender, and with him at Eton immediately to marry, she hath consented. Now, sir, her mother, even strong against that match and firm for Dr. Caius, hath appointed that he shall likewise shuffle her away while other sports are tasking of their minds, and at the deanery, where a priest attends, straight marry her. To this her mother's plot she seemingly obedient likewise hath made promise to the doctor. Now thus it rests. Her father means she shall be all in white, and in that habit, when Slender sees his time to take her by the hand and bid her go, she shall go with him. Her mother hath intended the better to denote her to the doctor, for they must all be masked and visored that quaint and green she shall be loose and robbed, with ribbons pendant, flaring about her head, and when the doctor spies his vantage ripe, to pinch her by the hand, and, on that token, the maid hath given consent to go with him. Host. Which means she to deceive, father or mother? Fenton. Both, my good host, to go along with me. And here it rests that you'll procure the vicar to stay or me at church, 'twixt 12 and 1, and in the lawful name of marrying, to give our hearts united ceremony. Host. Well, husband your device, I'll to the vicar. Bring you the maid, you shall not lack a priest. Fenton. So shall I evermore be bound to thee. Besides, I'll make a present recompense. Exeunt.